Lao Tzu on the power of focus. Have you ever wondered why you can't concentrate on your work? Why you keep procrastinating and feel sluggish and unfocused? A lack of focus is not just about interest or inspiration. It reflects how we control our minds and master them. Today, at the Lantern of Knowledge, we'll share a fascinating story about a conversation between Lao Tzu and a king. What secret did Lao Tzu reveal that made the king resolve to change his life forever? Stay till the end of the story and you'll learn how to better focus and control your mind. Let's get started. In the 6th century BC, a great philosopher named Lao Tzu was born in China. He was so humble and modest that every bit of his deep knowledge held value. Many pondered his words. One day, as word of his wisdom reached the emperor of that time, the king couldn't believe it was true. He couldn't accept someone being wiser than him. Eager to meet Lao Tzu after several failed attempts by his servants, the king himself went to find him for answers. Arriving at Lao Tzu's home, the king saw a simple straw house in a small garden. There, an old man in plain clothes was tending his garden. The emperor approached and asked, "Are you Lao Tzu?" He replied, "Yes, it's me. How can I help you?" The king said, "I've heard you possess extraordinary wisdom, but you seem so ordinary. How can I be sure you are truly exceptional?" Hearing this, Lao Tzu calmly challenged, "How can an ordinary man see the extraordinary?" The king was astonished by this response. He said, "You look like a farmer, yet you carry the demeanor of a nobleman. I am a king, yet I've never possessed your calmness. I long to achieve it, but my mind is always restless and filled with worries. Can you tell me how to achieve such a calm mind?" Lao Tzu agreed. "Yes, I will tell you, but first come to me tomorrow morning before sunrise." Then Lao Tzu continued his gardening, leaving the king to return home. That night, the king couldn't sleep, curious about what Lao Tzu would say. The next morning, just as instructed, he met Lao Tzu watering plants. Lao Tzu instructed, "Come here and help me water these remaining plants alone. Use this jug and start here, watering to the end of this row. Water each plant individually. But remember, while watering, you must remain absolutely silent, do nothing else, and think of nothing else. If a thought arises, stop and start over from the beginning. Once you've watered all the plants, come to me. I will offer you tea, and then I will tell you what's next." After this, Lao Tzu went inside for tea. The king found the task odd, thinking it would take only a few minutes. He began watering the first plant, moved to the second, but then started thinking about the gardens in his palace, always tended by others. Realizing he had thought, he restarted, adhering to the agreement. He completed the first and second plants with focus, but began thinking about overcoming previous thoughts and his kingdom's affairs at the third. Again, his mind wandered, and he restarted, embarrassed. This time, determined, he watered 5 plants until thoughts of wars and the security of his kingdom distracted him. Realizing his thoughts, he started over. The king battled his own mind, reminding himself to stay unthinking, achieving further each time. It was frustrating. Each attempt to water all the plants found him lost in thoughts. By midday, exhausted and drenched in sweat, he had to stop, accepting defeat. The sky turned evening, and he hadn't reached the last plant. Exhausted, he sat down, discovering Lao Tzu observing from the doorway. Approaching the king, Lao Tzu said, "I appreciate your honesty. Now, I will share the secret with you. Listen carefully. When the mind is clear, devoid of thoughts, its true power emerges, and even a mundane task can bring tranquility and limitless wisdom." The king deeply absorbed these words, asking, "But how can this be achieved? How can you attain thoughtlessness while doing anything? My mind never stops thinking continuously, and I can't make it stop. The more I try, the more it thinks. Lao Tzu told the king, "You couldn't complete this simple task because you've never trained your mind to focus, like a child who has never practiced writing. You've also never trained to control your mind. So, whenever your mind needs to focus on something, it loses calmness, worries, and fluctuates. You were defeated by your own thoughts." The king learned a valuable lesson and decided to master his mind rather than let it master him, causing worry and instability. He began practicing focusing on tasks and non-thinking to harness the power of the mind. This story teaches us that if we want to excel in any area of life, we must focus our minds. Whether in any task or meditation, focus is crucial for mental strength and the birth of wisdom. Though Lao Tzu and Buddha did not live in the same era, they shared similar views and practices. Both applied meditation and thoughtlessness to master their minds, learning to control their minds to become strong and powerful. This is the key to unlocking inner wisdom. Through this story of Lao Tzu, we learn the technique of non-thinking and focusing solely on the task at hand. This technique not only helps you focus better on your work, but also aids in practicing mastering your mind, preventing fluctuations and anxiety. Whenever you can, train to control your mind, not only through quiet sitting meditation, but also by working and meditating to practice this technique. Just keep yourself thought-free and focused on the present moment, focusing on your breath and what you are doing. Regular practice of this focus in silence and non-thinking will help reduce stress and fatigue. It will improve your health and also your intellect. You can do anything without losing much energy. Lastly, remember that focus in silence is the root of all wisdom's birth. Solutions will not appear when your mind is filled with millions of thoughts. So, whenever you face an unsolvable problem causing deadlock, let your mind focus only on the current task, unthinking and unworried. Everything, the universe will connect to you in that focused, alert state, and you will surely find a solution to your problem. 2. The art of not trying. Someone standing on their tiptoes cannot stand firmly. Someone rushing forward cannot go far. Someone trying to shine brighter than others only dims their own light. How can we improve if we stop trying to improve? Many people waste their efforts trying to make their life better, but with debatable results. They absorb knowledge and chase after external things, exhausting themselves physically and mentally, only to still live in dissatisfaction. Taoist philosophers have observed that people tend to act in inefficient ways. In their attempts to alter the course of nature, they only make things worse. All the struggle, norms, and moral standards, clearly created to benefit humanity, should, according to Taoist sages, be let go. Why is this? It's because human-made ideas only separate us further from the natural flow of life. Trying to alter what nature has set is like swimming against the current. It exhausts us and gets us nowhere. In this video, it's discussed how not trying to change the world actually allows you to possess the world. Behind a continuously moving universe is a mysterious and indefinable force that Taoist philosophers temporarily call the Tao, due to the limitations of language. The Tao encompasses everything and goes beyond all that our senses can perceive. Yet, we can know and feel the Tao, even if we can't fully understand it. This represents the tragic efforts of humans to concretize things that are beyond their understanding. They use names, categories, choices, and distinctions, but they cannot grasp what the universe truly is. Therefore, they create a distorted, artificial notion meant to make life more comprehensible to humans. But by trying to understand, they lose the Tao. 3. The tragedy of trying too hard. Lao Tzu once wrote in his work, Tao Te Ching that 5 colors can blind the eyes, 5 sounds can deafen the ears, 5 flavors can dull the taste. This means that while arranging colors, sounds, and flavors can enhance our understanding, it can also limit it as there are countless things outside these fixed ideas. Similarly, humans often create rigid rules for everything, hoping to gain a sense of control. In doing so, we restrict ourselves because the world is always changing, and what is true today may not be true tomorrow. From a perspective of consensus and justice, humans create systems filled with ethical standards and rituals that shape a highly artificial way of living. Even with good intentions, they strain to make things work well while inadvertently building their own prisons. Now, let's talk about the term trying. Most of us are familiar with the idea that we should simply act and not try too hard. This is closely related to the philosophy of going with the flow. In this state, one merges with the action, much like a dancer becomes one with the dance or a poet with their poem. This is Wu Wei, a concept often translated as effortless action or doing nothing. When we discuss going with the flow, Wu Wei should be understood as acting effortlessly, as our actions are smooth and pain-free. Literally, doing nothing is often viewed as an ineffective lifestyle that produces no results. However, in Taoism, this is not the case. Remembering that the universe is a swirling chaos, we realize there is always growth in the natural flow of life. Instead of forcing things and exhausting ourselves, a favorite method of today's culture, we could navigate life much more easily by using wisdom. Often, problems seem to resolve themselves, and by acting, we sometimes make things worse. When we waste time trying to improve everything, we distance ourselves from the natural flow. We keep acting in ways that, according to Taoism, go against nature and waste energy and mental effort. So why do we do this? It relates closely to how we value certain things. For example, while we despise poverty, we crave money and fame, and while we dislike loneliness, we desire to be part of something. So we try to eliminate the former and increase the latter, though the latter cannot exist without the former. Thus, we think it necessary to adhere to or adjust nature based on specific belief systems. We try to make the world better, though the outcomes of our interventions are often debatable. 4. How we strive. Now, how can we apply these ancient philosophies to modern life? According to Taoism, why do we, modern people, keep striving only to achieve insignificant results? Let's consider some examples of how we strive and compare them to the ancient Taoist texts, the Tao Te Ching and Zhuangzi. First, there's the effort to improve the world. Alan Watts, a scholar deeply versed in Taoism, pointed out that those with great noble ideals often cause the most disruption in society. Their attitude of needing to save the world often disrupts the natural flow because they are always looking for ways to implement human-made ideas of what is good and what is evil. We might ask ourselves, is using others' faults to create a good role for ourselves truly a virtue? This might also explain why those called social justice warriors often face intense dislike. We can't improve situations by demonizing certain groups while placing ourselves on a biased, one-sided moral pedestal. This only leads to more division, more tension, and less likelihood of long-term positive change. As Laozi wrote in the Tao Te Ching, do you want to rule the world and control it? I don't think it can be done. The world is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. You will only make it worse if you try. It will slip through your fingers and be lost. The second thing is to try to be happy. No matter if it's chasing money, status, fame, power, or knowledge, Our relentless pursuit of happiness is actually why we're not happy. We think we'll be happy when we have $1 million in the bank, or when we publish a book, or when our YouTube channel hits 100,000 subscribers. But that's not really the case. Sure, we enjoy a bit of temporary joy, but that's not true happiness as understood in Taoism. Also, by chasing these shallow forms of happiness, we end up wearing ourselves out physically and mentally, and tragically, we never achieve what we're looking for. This is what the world values: wealth, respect, long life, a good name. This is where the world finds happiness: an easy life, tasty food, nice clothes, beautiful sights, sweet sounds. This is what the world mocks: poverty, shabbiness, early death, a bad reputation. This is what the world finds bitter: a life with no rest, a mouth without tasty food, a body without nice clothes, eyes without beautiful sights, ears without sweet sounds. Those who can't have these suffer and worry. It's a childish way to treat the body. The rich wear themselves out by diving into business, accumulating more wealth than they can ever use. It's also a childish way to treat the body. So when pursuing happiness is a dead end, what should we do instead? The third way: embrace being different. There's a story in the Nanhua Jing about various creatures and the wind envying each other's inherent characteristics. The centipede envies the snake for moving without legs, while the snake envies the wind for its ability to travel far and wide without a body. However, the wind argues that just a finger or a toe is enough to stop it. Nature has made everything with unique traits. No one trait is better than another. It's only our judgment that makes it seem so. That's why we feel the need to change ourselves to fit an ideal. White people try to tan their skin, while East Asians try to look Western. People with black hair try to go blonde, and blondes turn to brunette. We also strive to change ourselves because we want to fit a standard created by society, simply because we are seen as flawed if we don't. So, a 6 finger is cut off to fit the standard of having 5. Why can't we just be ourselves the way nature intended? It's much easier that way. Everyone and everything has its place in the whole, and by trying to alter this, we bring imbalance to the world. When people see beauty, ugliness is created. When people see goodness, evil is created. Being and non-being create each other. Hard and easy complement each other. Long and short define each other. High and low oppose each other. Beginning and end follow each other. So, how can we apply these philosophies in practice? Taoist philosophers offer some suggestions. Firstly, the Nanhua Jing points out the benefits of following the middle path. This means not pushing ourselves beyond our means and limits, but rather grounding ourselves and finding comfort in our own nature, thereby maintaining health and returning closer to nature. Follow the middle path, flow with the everlasting nature, and you will preserve your body and mind. Keep yourself full of vitality, take care of your parents, and live out your years fully. The Tao is a continuous, everlasting flow. According to Lao-Tzu, those who seek the Tao let go of the knowledge they acquire each day. Instead of confining ourselves within an ideological framework, we release it, keep our minds open, and allow the universe to express itself. Attempting to change nature is a futile pursuit, much like trying to block out a natural view with man-made structures. Instead of accumulating knowledge, we let go of it until we reach a state of deep inner calm. Only then are we truly opening our hearts to the Tao, or, from a theological perspective, what might also be called God. In this empty state, we find joy, and joy is true happiness. Taoism calls this process the fasting of the heart, freeing the mind from the constraints of what is known and prejudices. By letting go of something each day, Taoist philosophers reach a state of non-doing. This is the art of effortlessness, where nothing is unsolvable.
Hey everyone, your comments truly matter, offering insights and motivation to others and uplifting our creative team at Lighthouse of Wisdom channel. Sharing your thoughts and experiences enriches our community. So, let's get the conversation started below and help illuminate our path with your wisdom.
5. Lao Tzu's teachings. Nothing is impossible if you don't go against the natural laws. Effective work has a clear beginning and end, and is based on solid reasons. Otherwise, people won't respect it. Actions aligned with human morality and the flow of nature yield sustainable, long-lasting results. Wise people focus on their tasks without competing for personal gain. This lack of competition means that no one struggles against them. In fact, those who do not vie for control often prevail because their actions benefit humanity without causing harm. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing oneself is true wisdom. Overcoming others requires strength, but mastering oneself is the true power. Success involves conquering your own weaknesses. Knowing when to stop can prevent you from falling into dangerous or difficult situations. It's important to cultivate virtue and avoid committing evil, as doing harm can burden one's soul across lifetimes. Lao Tzu advises ruling a nation with integrity and leading troops with adaptability. Achieving greatness involves recognizing and fostering the talents of others so they can thrive and contribute without being suppressed. Newborns are soft and weak, aging to become rigid and strong. Similarly, young plants are tender, hardening as they die. Thus, rigidity is associated with death and softness with life. Success comes not from rigidity but from blending flexibility with strength. Effective leaders place themselves below others. If you only pursue personal gain and disrespect others, you position yourself arrogantly, which won't win people's hearts. The more you talk, the less you communicate. Repeated words often lead to stumbling and confusion. It's better to speak with purpose and weight, rather than speak empty words that earn no respect. 6. Still tongue, no teeth. Lao Tzu advocated for living without contention, believing in the power of softness over hardness. There's an interesting story related to this philosophy. According to the Jingsheng chapter of the Shuoyuan, Lao Tzu's teacher was Chang Tong. Chang Tong was quite old and fell seriously ill one day. Lao Tzu visited him frequently and asked, "Teacher, you are very ill. Is there anything you wish to tell your student?" Chang Tong said, "Whenever you pass through your hometown, you must get down from your carriage. Do you know why?" Lao Tzu replied, "Getting down when passing our hometown is mainly to remember our roots." Chang Tong expressed his satisfaction, saying, "Exactly. Your answer pleases me greatly." Chang Tong then asked, "Why must one tread lightly and quickly with respect when passing a large tree?" Lao Tzu answered, "Passing a large tree respectfully signifies honoring the elderly." Chang Tong was pleased with his student's explanation. At that moment, Chang Tong asked Lao Tzu, "Look, do I still have my tongue?" Lao Tzu replied, "Yes, you do." Chang Tong then asked, "Do I still have my teeth?" Lao Tzu inspected carefully and replied, "Not a single one remains." Chang Tong asked, "Do you know why that is?" Lao Tzu answered, "Is it because the tongue survives since it is soft, while the teeth are lost because they are too hard?" Chang Tong was extremely satisfied with his wise student and said, "You have answered well. I have taught you all the principles of the world, and there is nothing more to say." 7. Knowing when you have enough will always leave you satisfied. In chapter 46 of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu teaches, "There is no greater disaster than not knowing what is enough, no greater fault than wanting to get more. Thus, knowing enough is always enough. This means that the greatest misfortune comes from not knowing when to stop desiring more, and the harm from wanting too much can lead to never having enough. Most people who suffer from distress and anxiety are often driven by their own greed. The more you chase after material things, the more pressure you put on yourself. This kind of pressure doesn't come from the outside world but is self-inflicted. Often people aren't unhappy because they have too little. They are unhappy because they have too much. Wanting too much when reality cannot always meet those desires is a common trap. Therefore, it's important to live modestly because limitless greed can lead someone into a downfall. By setting aside unnecessary desires, you'll find yourself much more relaxed and your stress will suddenly decrease. Hence, Lao Tzu believed that whether someone is rich or poor is determined by knowing when enough is enough. 8. Understanding others is wise. Understanding yourself is enlightened. In chapter 33 of the Tao Te Ching, LAOZI teaches, knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. Being content is wealth. Acting forcefully shows resolve. This means that understanding others is considered wise, but understanding yourself is considered enlightened. Overcoming others shows physical strength, but overcoming yourself shows true strength. A person who is truly successful must first conquer themselves. We often find it more challenging to understand ourselves than others. Instead of trying to conquer others, we should focus on conquering ourselves. In Chinese philosophy, yin and yang represent the two opposite forces within the Bagua, symbolizing the balance between opposing elements like light and dark, black and white, male and female. Everything in nature has two opposing and complementary sides that depend on each other. Material life often pushes us to focus more on making money than listening to our inner selves. From the perspective of Taoism, these actions belong to the yang aspect involving external movement, and we need to balance these with the yin aspect, which is our inner self. Therefore, the Tao Te Ching encourages us to spend time cultivating our inner self, learning to understand ourselves before attempting to understand others. 9. Taking a loss isn't always a loss. Chapter 28 of the Tao Te Ching says, what is diminished might actually bring gain, and what is added might lead to loss. Sometimes you might think you're at a disadvantage, but end up benefiting. And other times, what seems beneficial might actually be harmful. Everything in existence follows the law of yin and yang, where if one aspect thrives, the other diminishes. The key here isn't how much of yin or yang there is, but rather finding a balance that aligns with the natural order. Sometimes, short-term gains can disrupt this balance, leading to long-term instability. On the other hand, temporary setbacks can help maintain this equilibrium and promote harmony in the future. Therefore, wise people often focus more on fortune and prosperity rather than immediate benefits. Fortune and prosperity are about long-term impact, not just immediate gains or losses. Thus, ancient wisdom suggests that to attract good fortune and wealth, one should cultivate virtue and do good deeds, as the universe will take care of you. Ming Dynasty writer Wen Liufan wrote, one's destiny is forged by oneself, and one's luck must be sought by oneself. 10. Strength through flexibility. In the Tao Te Ching, Laozi wrote, the rigid will perish, the soft will survive. Rigidity falls below, softness rises above, meaning that being rigid leads to demise, while being flexible leads to life. Softness is superior to hardness. Laozi also wrote, nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water, Yet for attacking the hard and strong, nothing can surpass it, for there is no alternative. The soft overcomes the hard. The gentle overcomes the rigid. Everyone knows this is true, but few can put it into practice. Water may seem weak and insignificant, yet with its flowing power, it can penetrate mountains, destroy buildings, and no force can withstand or defeat it. Soft conquers hard. Weak conquers strong. Everyone knows this, but not everyone can do it. Gentle like a stream, soothing and accommodating, water appears weaker than everything but is stronger than everything. It is not the rock or the fire that conquers water, but the persistent flow of water that erodes rock. Only through humility can a person be inclusive and endure long, just like water. When we think like water, we learn to behave more calmly, reduce our rough edges, and control both our own and others' attitudes. When about to get angry, think of the relaxing and pleasant feeling under a cool stream of water. Perhaps we can prevent an unnecessary conflict or argument. Understanding water not only helps us improve our behavior, change our temperament, or become a guiding teacher in our lives, but water is also the matrix of all growth. Everything in nature is painted by the invisible brush of water, creating a world that is not perfect but incredibly diverse and intelligent. Understanding this lesson can surely make your life better and more profound. 11. Be as forgiving and kind as water. From an Eastern philosophical viewpoint, all primitive life on Earth originated from water. Thus, it is said that water is the source of life. Lao Tzu taught that human virtues and kindness should be like water because water nurtures all things without competing. It benefits everyone without seeking recognition and fills places that are lacking and recedes from places that are overflowing. Above ground, it turns into rain. Below ground, it forms streams and rivers. The highest good is like water. Water benefits all things and does not compete. Water follows its course naturally and does not maintain a permanent shape. Similarly, the Tao does not compete with anything in nature. Emphasizing this lesson, Lao Tzu praised the strength of being yielding, soft, and non-action. People should live naturally like water, seeking lower places to reside, preferring depth in relationships, valuing kindness in actions, speaking truthfully, governing peacefully, working in harmony with one's abilities and acting timely. Humans learn from water's qualities, which constantly flows like a long river, always clear no matter how much dirt it carries. To the kind, I am kind. To the unkind, I am still kind. This is what being kind means. In all matters, people maintain a kind heart, treating others with kindness, and even if they face immediate losses, they don't lose their faith. This wins them love and support from others and the universe, a harmonious blend of right timing, favorable conditions, and good relationships. Understanding this lesson opens one's heart wide to blend with everything, multiplying happiness continually. 12. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. This quote from Lao Tzu translates to, "The mightiest tree grows from a tiny sprout. A 9-story tower starts with a small pile of earth. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Famous writer during the Qing dynasty, Pan Yudu, once told a story about 2 monks. One was wealthy, the other poor. Both wanted to cross the southern sea to India to seek scriptures and worship Buddha. The wealthy monk said to the poor one, "For years, I've tried to rent boats to cross the sea, but to no avail. What will you use for your pilgrimage?" A year later, the wealthy monk still hadn't set out, while the poor monk had already returned from his journey. Surprised, the wealthy monk asked how he managed it. The poor monk simply said, "During my trip, I relied on a water jug and a begging bowl. That's all I needed to fulfill my wish." The poor monk achieved his goal by taking one step at a time, relying on his own courage and will. In contrast, the wealthy monk was caught up in dreams, talking about his desires without taking serious action. Different mindsets lead to different outcomes. Words alone cannot turn desires into reality. Only those who dare to act despite hardships can enjoy the ultimate rewards. 13. Laozi discusses philosophy with Confucius, who reveres him as a teacher. While living in the state of Lu, Confucius once told his disciple, Nam Kung Kin Thuk, Laozi bridges the ancient and the modern, understands the origins of ritual music, and knows the principles of morality. I now wish to visit the Zhou house to learn from him. Would you care to join me? The disciple happily agreed and quickly prepared horses and servants to accompany Confucius on his journey. Laozi, delighted to receive a visitor from thousands of miles away, warmly welcomed him. Laozi asked Confucius which books he was reading. Confucius replied that he was studying the Zhu Yi, a text also read by the sages. Laozi questioned, "The sages reading it is fine, but why do you need to read it? What is the essence of this book?" Confucius answered, "It promotes benevolence and righteousness." Laozi then said, "Benevolence and righteousness are like the itch of mosquito bites in the night. They only enthrall the heart, leading to distress and confusion. Look at that swan. It does not need to bathe to be as white as snow. Look at that crow. It does not dye its feathers, yet is naturally black. Therefore, just as the sky is naturally high and the earth is thick, so everything is naturally in order. When you cultivate the way, simply follow the natural laws that exist, and you will achieve it. Why proclaim benevolence and righteousness?" Laozi further asked, "Have you attained the way?" Confucius humbly admitted, "I have sought the way for 27 years, but have not yet succeeded." Laozi explained, "If the way were tangible, people would compete to present it to the emperor. If it could be given as a gift, people would give it to their relatives and friends. If it could be taught, people would explain it to their children. But since the way is not tangible, none of these are possible. Therefore, when a person's mind does not correctly perceive the way will never come to that person." Confucius said, "I have studied the classic of poetry, historical records, Zhou rituals, Zhou music, the I Ching, and the spring and autumn annals about the governance of ancient kings, and presented them to over 70 different kings, but none agreed to use them. It seems people are hard to convince." Laozi remarked, "What you speak of belongs to ancient history. Your scholarly achievements also stem from the past. What use are they today? Being relics, they are like the marks left by old shoes. How are they different from footprints?" Later, Laozi took Confucius to visit the great doctor Zhang Huang to learn about the ritual systems of Zhou. Delving deeper, he marveled, "I never imagined music could reach such a profound and miraculous level." He became even more determined to pass his entire knowledge to the state of Lu. However, Laozi hinted that the Zhou rituals were no longer suitable for the times. He said, "I've heard that the wealthy give riches, and the righteous give words. I am neither rich nor noble, so I consider myself a man of righteousness, wishing to give you a few words. Today, those who are intelligent and insightful often face calamities, even death, because they criticize others' faults. Those who understand the ways of the world face continuous misfortunes because they expose others' evils. As a son, do not think yourself superior. As a servant, do not consider yourself better. Remember this well." Confucius replied, "I only worry that the great way is not practiced, that righteousness is not implemented, leading to incessant wars and national unrest. It is a pity if a man's life is short and he contributes nothing to the people and the times." Laozi then pointed to the vast yellow river nearby. Then why don't you learn from the virtue of water? Water is good. It benefits all things without contention. The sea can be the king of 100 rivers and 1,000 streams because it excels at being low. That is the virtue of humility. Nothing is weaker than water, yet nothing can overcome its strength. That is the virtue of softness. Therefore, the soft overcomes the hard, the weak overcomes the strong. Because water has no fixed shape, it easily penetrates every corner, thus demonstrating that teaching without words and benefiting without action are possible. Confucius returned home and for 3 days spoke to no one and found no pleasure in food or drink, causing those around him to inquire persistently. After deep reflection, Confucius finally said, "Birds, I know they can fly, and I use bows and arrows. Fish, I know they can swim, and I use fishing hooks. Animals, I know they can run, and I use nets. But as for the dragon, I do not know how it utilizes the wind to ascend to the heavens. Having met Laozi in my lifetime, he is like that dragon, profound and immeasurable. He truly is my teacher." 14. Laozi's Wu Wei principle. Doing nothing as a form of great wisdom. Laozi once said, "Wu Wei Wu Bu Wei," which simply means if it feels right to do nothing, then don't do anything. Nature and the earth operate in a natural cycle, and if we intervene, we may disrupt this cycle. By doing nothing, we ensure that this natural cycle continues to function normally. This approach is especially effective when we're unsure how to handle a situation. According to Laozi, it's often best to do nothing at all. Doing nothing is not about giving up. Wu Wei, or doing nothing, is not about being passively inactive. Rather, it's a way of living that can be more beneficial than doing. By stopping the impulse to act, we can escape restlessness and find new ways for ourselves, discovering value in simplicity, gentleness, and nurturing our innate vitality. In life, we often emphasize the importance of doing something and overlook the benefits of not doing. People typically see Wu Wei as beneficial. However, we can also minimize negative outcomes by Wu Wei. Many dislike the idea of Wu Wei because it seems like a step back rather than a positive move forward. Doing nothing is often labeled as negative. Sometimes, we fear others will see us as unambitious or lazy, so we suppress the thought of not wanting to do anything. In reality, doing but in chaos can have a greater adverse impact than doing nothing at all. Doing nothing is a form of great wisdom. To better understand Laozi's Wu Wei, consider this example. Seeing a tiger hunt a deer, if we kill the tiger to save the deer, we might harm the tiger cubs waiting for food from their mother. If we help the tiger catch the deer more easily, we harm the deer. The most natural course of action is to let nature take its course. This principle effectively explains why we need to conserve nature, and the best conservation method is often to do nothing, letting nature thrive and decline on its own. Most problems arise from our actions, leading to adversity and instability. Humans are naturally active and tend to embrace distractions that bring joy. Yet we often lack persistence. If someone decides not to overthink, they avoid getting trapped in problems, leading to less worry, irritation, and anxiety. If someone can restrain their emotional life and not seek out the unusual, they avoid disasters stemming from complex emotions and misunderstandings. If someone is cautious and avoids high-risk actions, they can prevent foolish mistakes. Remember, our capacity to focus is limited. When you focus on one thing, you lose focus on another. Especially in an era of information overload, it's challenging to choose and concentrate on one thing, losing our rationality and alertness. Laozi says that doing nothing is difficult because it requires a high level of mental activity. Wu Wei is harder to achieve than Yu Wei. In most situations, we can't control our inner urge to think this or do that, but we often forget to ask ourselves, why should I do this, or why should I not? Wu Wei does not mean literally doing nothing but allowing things to happen naturally in harmony with the Tao. Therefore, we should do what is necessary, but without excessive enthusiasm and blind action. This represents a state of inner silence, where the right actions emerge effortlessly at the right time. 15. Understanding the concept of hoarding. Lao Tzu once said, "Hoarding leads to greater loss. The more one accumulates, the more one stands to lose." The biggest obstacle in life is often found in the act of hoarding. Once a person is engulfed by it, achieving happiness becomes nearly impossible. 1. Hoarding is greed. At the birthday celebration of Niem Tung, the head official of the Ming Dynasty's cabinet, the entire court came to offer their congratulations, and gifts piled up like mountains. At that time, Niem Tung had sold his official titles, and Niem the Fian, who controlled the Ministry of Works, had wealth surpassing even the national treasury. As the feast lasted until midnight, and all the guests had left, the Niem family began to lock up their house. It was winter, and the weather was extremely cold. Unfortunately, a court inspector got lost and ended up shivering in the courtyard. The chief steward of the Niem family then invited the inspector to his quarters to rest and stay the night, earning his deep gratitude. The steward said, "I am helping you now, but in the future you might have to help me. You owe me a favor, and someday, please spare my life." The inspector felt anxious and replied, "Lord Ningiem shines like the midday sun in the cabinet. His status is so exalted. Why would he ever need me to spare his life?" Years later, Niem Tung's power was overthrown. Niem the Fian was executed, and their estate was investigated. The steward was also imprisoned for accepting bribes, but later the inspector helped reduce his sentence. Ultimately, the steward was spared from execution and exiled to the frontier. Feng Mong Long once remarked, "Niem Tung and Niem the Fian had read all sorts of literature, but their understanding was not as good as a steward's. To lose one's life and family, what could be more regrettable?" What fills must overflow. Extreme prosperity inevitably leads to decline. This is the natural order. Without restraint, only ruin awaits. Hessian, an official during the Qing dynasty, amassed 1.1 billion ounces of silver, thousands of plots of land, and hundreds of houses over 20 years, exceeding the national income for 15 years. But what happened later? Hessian fell from power, and Jia Khan, sated, eventually gave him a white silk noose to end his life. To this day, Hessian's life remains nothing more than a tragic joke. 2. Hoarding is claiming possession for oneself. Chu Quoc Bin once shared a story about a white rabbit that loved the beauty of nature, especially the moon. In the rabbit's eyes, the waxing and waning of the moon held its own beauty. Therefore, the king of the gods met with the rabbit and decided to grant it ownership of the moon. From then on, the moon belonged only to this white rabbit. Every night, the rabbit would go into the forest and lie in the grass to gaze at the moon. However, its relaxed demeanor changed as it began to think, "This is my moon." It watched the moon intensely, like a wealthy person guarding their gold. When clouds obscured the moon, it grew anxious, fearing its treasure might be lost. As the moon cycled through its phases, the rabbit felt pained as if someone was stealing from it. In the rabbit's eyes, the moon's beauty was overshadowed by fear of loss, plunging it into a world of gain and loss. Unlike humans, the white rabbit eventually retained its pure heart and went to see the king of the gods, asking to revoke the decision. Nowadays, many people hoard just because they enjoy it, content to admire quietly. However, once they start buying and selling, the joy in appreciating beauty becomes obscured. Their mood gradually changes. To increase the value of their possessions, they neglect their health, turn away from friends, and even compromise their principles. Lao Tzu said, "The more you love, the greater the loss." Excessive greed inevitably leads to significant depletion. All external things are but fleeting clouds. Why persist in owning them and worry about loss, disturbing the peace of your inner self? 1,000 years ago, at the site of the Battle of Red Cliffs, Su Dongpo felt inspired to say, "Cool breezes on the river, bright moon over the mountain peaks, ears hearing sounds, eyes seeing scenery. Hands can take without limit, use without end. This is the endless treasure of creation. Enjoying cool breezes and the bright moon is the greatest joy in life. Why keep it only for oneself?" 3. Hoarding is not knowing what to do. A director once remarked, "After turning 50, I enjoy scenery just to please myself. Everything else is unnecessary." But why can small profits lead to disputes among brothers? How powerful are these things? How much money is enough? And can you take it with you? When visiting the ancient houses in Shanxi, I saw more than a dozen homes several hundred years old. The owners of these homes have long passed away, and no information about them can be found. The people holding the keys have no relation to them. It's said, "Possessions beyond the body do not come with birth and cannot be taken in death." People only live for a few decades. Why cling to these things? Lao Tzu said, "He who knows when enough is enough will always have enough." Knowing sufficiency and contentment is true wealth. Those who know when enough is enough don't overthink, don't set unattainable goals, don't let greed dirty their souls, and don't deceive. Their hearts aren't burdened with sorrow, and they live comfortably and peacefully. Thousands of temptations in life can wear you out physically and mentally, leading to death. So when it's time to let go, do so calmly. Having enough food and clothes without worries is already fortunate. Being free from illness and disaster means you have enough blessings. Life isn't without happiness. It's just the lack of knowing when enough is enough that causes sorrow. 16. The way of the sage, working without competing. Laozi taught, "The way of the sage is to act but not compete, and being uncompetitive, thus no one in the world competes with them." These phrases mean that sages simply do their work without engaging in competition. Because they do not compete, nobody competes with them either. A person or a country that does not compete with others, that lacks desire and pursuit, and that wins people over with virtue, will find that no one competes against them. Laozi intended this principle to eliminate the desires for violence and the competitive spirit among ancient rulers. If everyone could live without desires and pursuits, they would achieve a state of effortless existence. Just as Laozi said, the highest good is like water. Water benefits all things without competing. It stays in places people disdain, yet it is content and thus nearly achieves the way. This means that water is supreme because it benefits everything without competing for its own advantage. The noble quality of a wise person is like water, benefiting all without competing, staying where least desired yet remaining content and at ease, thus being close to the way. In life, Laozi's idea that by being uncompetitive, no one in the world can compete with you, represents a philosophy of simplifying complexity and embodies wisdom in dealing with the world. Often, those who do not compete are not the losers, nor are they weak. They are the ones who understand the deeper principles, knowing when to advance and when to retreat, realizing that stepping back opens up broad vistas. This represents a kind of character, a high form of wisdom, and a deep cultivation. 17. You can never say it all, so it's better to stick to moderation. Lao Tzu taught, more words count less, meaning the more you say, the less you can explain everything. It's better to maintain moderation. Lao Tzu wrote that speaking too much can eventually lead you to a point where you're left speechless, confused, and unable to say anything. It's better to follow the path of moderation. Moderation means not leaning towards any extreme, and harmony means being appropriate to the situation. Especially avoid empty, meaningless talk. 18. People are soft when born and stiff when they die. Lao Tzu wrote, humans are born soft and weak, and die hard and strong. Everyone is soft and fragile at birth but becomes rigid in death. Lao Tzu also said, all things, like plants and trees, are tender and soft when alive but dry and brittle when dead. Therefore, hardness and strength are companions of death, while softness and weakness are companions of life. Thus, a strong army does not prevail. A rigid tree will easily break. Hardness and strength are inferior, while softness and weakness are superior, much like using the soft to overcome the hard, and using gentleness and flexibility to overcome rigidity. 19. The way of the sage, acting without competing. Lao Tzu wrote, the way of the sage is to act without striving for competition. Because they do not compete, no one in the world can compete with them. This means that the essence of a sage's approach is to do things without engaging in rivalry. By not being competitive, they find that no one competes with them. Lao Tzu also described the principle of leadership, to lead without trying to conquer. It is by not seeking to conquer that no one comes to contest them. Similarly, Lao Tzu wrote, the highest goodness is like water. Water benefits all things without contention. It stays in places that people despise, and thus it is closest to the way. This suggests that the ultimate level of goodness resembles the nature of water. Water does not compete for advantage with anything. It resides where least noticed, and thus it is most aligned with the way. Those who do not compete paradoxically often gain the advantage because their actions naturally benefit others without causing harm. 20. Being good at employing people means placing oneself below them. Lao Tzu taught, the master of people serves them from below, meaning that those who are adept at utilizing others must know to place themselves below others. Lao Tzu also wrote that a good leader places themselves below others. If one only considers personal gains, does not respect others, and is not kind to those who work for them, then they are placing themselves in a higher position. How can one win the hearts of people if they always place themselves above others and others beneath them? 21. The best way to govern is by following natural rhythms. Lao Tzu teaches, to govern people and serve heaven, nothing compares to frugality. He explains that managing people closely connects to nature itself. The optimal approach is akin to farming, respecting the natural growth and harvest cycles without forcing them. By nurturing crops according to their developmental needs, they naturally thrive and yield abundant harvests. Similarly, a leader who guides people according to these natural principles will achieve great results. 22. Knowing when you have enough ensures you never lack. Lao Tzu wrote, to know when you have enough is to be perpetually satisfied. This means that understanding what is sufficient prevents feelings of scarcity. Conversely, someone who never feels enough will always feel lacking. A good-hearted person might not own much in terms of wealth, cars, or savings, but knowing what is enough allows them to enjoy a content and happy life. 23. Look within yourself to find everything you need. Lao Tzu states, "Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power." Success requires self-awareness and the ability to conquer one's personal challenges. In Chinese philosophy, the yin and yang represent the balance of opposites, like light and dark or male and female within the natural world. Everything has dual aspects that are complementary and interdependent. Our materialistic focus often overshadows inner self-reflection. From a Taoist perspective, such outward pursuits are considered yang, external actions. We need balance between these external and internal aspects. Therefore, the Tao Te Ching advises us to spend time nurturing our inner self. Starting with mindfulness meditation can help balance oneself, tune in to our bodies, and unlock energy for personal breakthroughs. 24. Govern with integrity, utilize flexibility in warfare, and achieve mastery over the world through non-action. Lao Tzu taught, use integrity to govern a country, flexibility in deploying troops, and inaction to win the world. This is the way to govern with integrity, use flexibility in warfare, and achieve mastery through non-action. According to Lao Tzu, the more prohibitions there are, the poorer the people become. The more weapons the people have, the darker the nation. The more clever and crafty the people, the stranger the things that arise. The clearer the laws, the more robbers and thieves there are. I do nothing, and the people transform themselves. I prefer quiet, and the people right themselves. I am not involved, and the people prosper. I have no desires, and the people themselves become simple. 25. Wise Sayings by Lao Tzu for Life. 1. If you want everything, you must let go of everything. 2. If you understand that everything changes, you shouldn't try to hold on to anything. 3. Worrying about defeating others leads to chaos. Mastering yourself brings peace. 4. Understanding others is wise. Truly, understanding yourself is wisdom. 5. Without opposition, demons will naturally disappear. 6. Those who want to prove themselves often don't know who they are. 7. Great beginnings are often disguised as tragic endings. 8. Let things flow naturally. 9. Softness overcomes hardness. Stillness overcomes restlessness. 10. If you want to contract, first allow it to expand. If you want to let go, allow it to burst forth. If you want something, first give it away. 11. If a person realizes they lack nothing, the whole world belongs to them. 12. A wise person knows what they don't know. 13. Focusing on others' approval makes you their prisoner. 14. Being formless and shapeless is the truest peace. 15. Those who act or promise recklessly are unlikely to keep their word. 16. A clean mirror does not gather dust. A clear mind does not cling to desires. 17. When you are content being simply yourself, without comparing or competing, everyone will respect you. 18. As long as you have desires, you only see what is manifested externally, not the deeper internal reality. 19. Happiness is born from suffering. Suffering hides within happiness. 20. To know when you have enough is to truly have enough. To know leisure is to truly be at leisure. 21. Those who wish to control others usually can't control themselves. 22. Those who wish to show off will only overshadow themselves. 23. If you look into your heart, you can find all the answers. 24. Those who rush forward cannot go far. 25. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. 26. Lao Tzu's 3 teachers. 1. Studying with Master Shang Dung. As a child, Lao Tzu studied under a teacher named Shang Dung. After 3 years, he had learned all that his teacher knew. Before departing to live in the mountains, Master Shang Dung gave him some advice. Look, my teeth are nearly all gone, but my tongue remains intact. Do you know why? Although teeth are hard, they are more likely to break while the soft tongue persists. As a person, it's better to be gentle and not too rigid, as this helps you last longer. Stay calm and follow what is right. Through diligent study and the teachings of Master Shang Dung, Lao Tzu gained a great deal of knowledge during his youth and began to explore the origins of heaven, earth, and governance, which later influenced his own teachings. 2. Seeking Master Ben Yuan in the mountains. Determined to understand the origins of heaven, earth, and all things, young Lao Tzu ventured alone to Hidden Mountain to study with Master Ben Yuan. There, he learned profound truths and simple yet deep teachings about the Great Way, setting the stage for his later development of the virtue theory and his path to enlightenment and teaching. During that era of continuous warfare among states, before returning home, Master Ben Yuan advised Lao Tzu, "The way of heaven operates naturally. Humans should relinquish desires and return to their true nature, following the natural order. Everyone has a predetermined fate. Difficulties have reasons. Keep your heart pure and free of desires, work on good deeds, and help others, and it will be as if I am always with you." 3. Going to Mount Tai Yi to learn from Master Zijian. After returning home, Lao Tzu continued to study what Master Ben Yuan had taught him. Hearing of a great sage named Zijian in Mount Tai Yi, Lao Tzu decided to seek his wisdom. Upon meeting Zijian, Lao Tzu expressed his desire to learn about governance. Impressed by Lao Tzu's extraordinary demeanor and spirit, Zijian accepted him as a student. One day, Zijian had to leave on a trip and left Lao Tzu with a set of books and 6 questions, saying these encompassed all phenomena between heaven and earth and the ultimate truth about governance. He instructed Lao Tzu that understanding these would allow him to answer all life's questions and benefit humanity, making his life worthwhile. The 6 teachings were: 1. Govern your heart, be pure and desireless. 2. Govern your body, be gentle and soft. 3. To govern the world, be natural and unforced. 4. To govern your household, be united and harmonious. 5. To govern your spirit, preserve unity and return to your origin. 6. To govern all things, everything follows one ultimate path. After mastering these teachings, Lao Tzu was asked by Zijian if he understood how to govern according to the way of heaven. Lao Tzu replied, "The way of heaven is impartial and desireless, effortless and unobtrusive, infinite and boundless, simply natural, balancing all things. To govern effectively, one should eliminate greed, avoid reckless actions, conserve energy, unify above and below, respect all without discrimination, avoid conflicts, and achieve peace. In doing so, governance will be sustainable and transformative." One day, Lao Tzu felt uneasy and couldn't understand why. Zijian explained, "This disturbance comes from fear. Born between heaven and earth, humans face life, aging, sickness, death, and the sorrow of separation. The origin of all suffering is fear. If your spirit is not frightened, your heart will not be disturbed. Remember this and face all situations calmly, whether joyous or sad. Before leaving to descend the mountain, Zijen reminded Lao Tzu, "This time, you have learned much. Continue to grasp the Great Way's truth and spread its teachings to enlighten others. If you succeed, your efforts will be celebrated forever." 27. The Life and Philosophy of Laozi. Laozi was a philosopher and thinker of immense influence in Eastern philosophy, comparable to Confucius and other ancient Chinese philosophers, perhaps even surpassing them. His teachings and thoughts hold a significant place and have greatly impacted future generations. However, his biography is quite complex and mysterious. Many scholars and historians have speculated about the accuracy and even the existence of Laozi. Was he a figure partly historical, partly mythical? Consequently, many legends about Laozi have different cultural and folkloric aspects, turning him into a near-mythical figure with details such as laughing at birth, his mother being pregnant for 70 years, which is why he had white hair at birth, exiting through the Western Gate of China, leaving behind the Tao Te Ching and transcending, living quietly and supposedly over 200 years old. In some texts, he is considered eternal, a heavenly figure, or even equated with the Supreme Being, descending multiple times to save humanity. Some even suggest Buddha was his reincarnation or disciple. According to the historian Sima Qian, Laozi was from the village of Kuxian in the Lixiang area, Hu district, in what is now Hunan province. His surname was Li, given name courtesy name Boyong, and his posthumous name was Dan. He worked as a keeper of the archives at the Zhou dynasty court. His exact birth and death dates are unclear, roughly between 580–500 BC, during the late spring and autumn to early Warring States period, contemporary with Confucius. Exploring Laozi's biography reveals its complexity, but this aligns with his teachings about being nameless, actionless, leaving no trace, and performing deeds without seeking recognition, suggesting he intentionally obscured his own history. Moreover, details about Laozi like his name, where he was born, or the myths around him are less important than learning from and reflecting on the ideas and principles in his Tao Te Ching. The other details about Laozi are secondary. Therefore, the focus should remain on the core content of his work, which has intrigued and intellectually challenged many generations, making it a historically unparalleled document. The essence and impact of his teachings are what truly matter. 2. Overview of Laozi's philosophy. Laozi's teachings are encapsulated in the Tao Te Ching, which is regarded as the first significant and influential philosophical work from ancient China. Through this text, Laozi is seen as the first to theorize about the universe. Indeed, according to scholar Nguyen Hien Lei, from ancient times, parallel to the spring and autumn period in China, several philosophers like Thales, Anaximenes, Anaximander, and Heraclitus discuss the origins and nature of the universe. However, in China at that time, aside from beliefs in worshiping heaven and theories like yin-yang, the 5 elements, and the I Ching, no philosopher systematically addressed these foundational issues, except for Laozi. Therefore, we have every reason to say that Laozi was the first to discuss the origins of the universe. Before him, no one questioned whether the universe had a beginning or an end. He believed that the universe had a beginning and essentially no end. From this, it is evident that the central doctrine of the Tao Te Ching is about the Tao, the way, and De, virtue. Explaining the Tao and De is also to discuss Laozi's cosmology. According to him, the Tao is the source of the universe, and heaven and earth and all things are born from the Tao. Because of this creation of heaven, earth, and all things, the Tao is referred to as the universal principle or ultimate principle of everything. The Tao is described as the universal principle because it generates the universe and all things, each having its own principle, yet the Tao harmonizes with all these principles. Therefore, the Tao is constantly transforming and is eternal. The Tao is undifferentiated chaos, the primal source, and also the eternal movement that cannot be felt or sensed. Laozi said, "The great Tao flows everywhere, to the left and to the right. All things depend on it to exist, yet it claims no accomplishment. It nourishes myriad creatures, yet it does not claim to be master." Although the Tao generates all things, it is distinct from the things it produces. Thus, the Tao is both existent and non-existent. Non-existent because the Tao is not any particular thing, existent because it can generate the universe and all things. Non-existence indicates the essence of the Tao. Existence refers to the function of the Tao. Or in other words, non-existence, which is nameless, is the root of heaven and earth. Existence, which has a name, is the mother of all things. As for virtue in Laozi's sense, it is similar to the innate virtue in all things in the universe. Simply put, while the Tao generates, virtue nurtures. A person living with virtue is living in accordance with the Tao. Furthermore, if the Tao generates all things, these things can only function through virtue. Virtue is seen as the essence of the Tao. Having virtue means a thing can truly be itself. Therefore, virtue can be described as the abode of the Tao residing within all things. In other words, virtue is what an entity obtains from the Tao to be itself. In summary, the Tao is the universal principle or ultimate principle that generates the universe and all things, while virtue is the principle that nurtures a thing. The Tao is universal, encompassing the universe and all things, and virtue is specific, contained within each entity. Thus, the Tao and virtue are inseparable and indistinguishable. Discussing the Tao is essentially discussing virtue, and discussing virtue is discussing the Tao. Thanks to the close and subtle relationship between the Tao and virtue, the universe and all things are created and operate. From this general understanding of the Tao and virtue, many scholars from both Eastern and Western traditions consider the Tao Te Ching a book about spiritual Taoism, guiding people on the path of mysticism and transcendence and a practice of life cultivation for all times. 1. The origin of the Tao Te Ching. Today, it is believed that the Tao Te Ching was written after the era of Hui Shi and Gong Sun Long, around the 4th century BCE, and was originally called the Book of Laozi. The Tao Te Ching contains 81 chapters and about 5,000 characters, divided into two parts: the Tao Jing, which consists of 37 chapters discussing the Tao, the great origin of the universe, and the De Jing, which consists of 44 chapters about virtue, the energy of the Tao flowing through the universe. The Tao Te Ching is written in varying lengths of sentences, rich in rhythm, and sounds like modern free verse poetry. It is concise without punctuation, theoretical argumentation, or elaborate proof. The style used is ancient prose, which is terse and compact, rich in meaning, easy to memorize but not so easy to understand. As such, it seems designed to provoke thought and reflection, allowing the reader to engage deeply with their inner voice. Readers have ample opportunity to continue the creative and reflective process, making the work vibrant, penetrating, and ever-expanding with each reading. Furthermore, it is believed that the original form of the Tao Te Ching as we know it today is not exactly the same. Over time, through various transmissions, the text likely underwent additions, omissions, or errors. However, the exact preservation of the text is less important than the fact that it has maintained a coherent arrangement and a systematic organization around various themes. Besides the main themes of Tao and De, encompassing cosmology and epistemology, the Tao Te Ching also includes topics like the saintly way of managing relationships and governance, military strategy, astronomy, and health preservation. 2. On the concept of the Tao. Laozi was not only the first to discuss the origins of the universe, as mentioned earlier, but he also used the term Tao to describe the absolute principle of the universe. According to him, the Tao existed before the heavens and earth were created. It is eternal, unchanging, and neither increases nor decreases. Laozi described it as a chaotic entity that existed before heaven and earth. It is silent and formless, stands alone without changing, operates throughout the universe ceaselessly, and can be regarded as the mother of everything under heaven. Thus, for Laozi, the Tao is the original source of the universe, and possibly the fundamental principle or element of the universe. The Tao can be viewed from two aspects: the invisible, where the Tao is the intangible principle of heaven and earth, and the visible, where the Tao is a tangible principle, the mother of all creation. Therefore, the invisible and the visible, non-being and being, show two modes of the Tao. When considering the Tao's more mystical mode, it is seen as the non-being. When considering its boundlessly transformative mode, through its essence, it is seen as being. The Tao is a completely mysterious, metaphysical, and ineffable principle, which is why it cannot be named. Indeed, how can humans use a name to label a supremely mystical and eternal entity, infinite, formless, that permeates everywhere and is unlike anything else? Naming this entity the Tao is merely a human attempt to define what is ultimately indefinable. Indeed, by attempting to name this absolute principle, we only distance ourselves from its true nature, which is the complete truth of the Tao. Therefore, Laozi believed that nothing in this world is absolute. Everything is relative. All things are impermanent, constantly changing at varying speeds. This impermanence defines the relativity in all things, meaning every object inherently has dual aspects: good, bad, right, wrong, long, short, high, low, shallow, deep, honor, disgrace. These relative pairs are inherent in things and lead to conflicts and contradictions within themselves. To truly follow the Tao, one must not view the world in dualistic terms but see all as one. To achieve true happiness, one must let go of the dividing mind, as Laozi put it, dissolving the partitions to perceive the profound unity of all things. Furthermore, while the Tao encompasses all, it is as if it does nothing. This is the practical essence of the Tao. The usefulness of the Tao and its characteristic of emptiness can be likened to the hub of a wheel, the space in a cup, or the void in a room. Thus, it can be understood that the Tao is reality itself, creating all life and sustaining it through the release of its energy. This is a general statement for the entire universe and life. For humans, particularly regarding the teachings of life cultivation or spiritual practices, the practicality of the Tao shows us that it never compels anyone to follow a specific path. The Tao just operates. It is the path itself, a natural path that is the way of nature and fits everything. 3. On the movement of the Tao. Everything in the universe, from the sky and earth to all creatures, originates from the Tao and returns to it. This shows that the life process of all things doesn't end in nothingness, but is a continuous transformation through an intrinsic principle of contradiction. When things reach an extreme, they change. When they reach their limit, they reverse. This is the law of balancing and returning, the principle that governs the changes and operations of all things. Indeed, the Tao is a movement, an ongoing transformation that generates the universe. This might explain why everything in nature is also in constant motion. To put it simply, everything is in a state of movement, and this movement causes imbalance, which in turn drives things to return to balance. In the previous section, we understood the Tao as an unceasing principle that operates the universe and is the mother of all things. Here, when discussing the movement of the Tao, we refer to the Tao's path of returning or going back. Returning is the movement of the Tao. This concept is a crucial point in Laozi's philosophy, surpassing the dualistic teachings of the I Ching and advocating the Tao's path of returning to the true and simple. According to Laozi, everything moves in two opposite directions, going out and coming back. Thus, the root here of the Tao is the origin of stillness. In other words, stillness is the root of movement. From a state of nothingness, stillness, things are born, movement, and then they return to nothingness, the law of returning. From this, Laozi advocates a way of life of non-action, aiming to return to the root and embrace the destiny, and ultimately to achieve the Tao of permanence, unchanging, always correct. Understanding and grasping this principle allows humans in some way to match the heaven and earth, as inherent in the concept of permanence, which implies something steadfast and holding the essence of the universe. 4. Discussing the philosophical meaning of mystical unity. Laozi, a foundational philosopher, spoke not only about the Tao as the essential truth and absolute principle of the universe, but also discussed the concept of virtue. According to him, virtue is the source from which heaven and earth and all things arise. It represents a silent, life-giving force, a great power of the Tao that transcends ordinary moral interpretations and focuses more on a metaphysical sense. Laozi described this as, from Tao comes virtue which nurtures all, a process called mystical unity, akin to a miraculous mother. Here, Laozi illustrates virtue's role in nurturing all things as a mother tenderly cares for her children, the universe and all within it. This highlights the boundless significance and function of virtue. As stated earlier, the Tao is seen as a mother to all beings, with all creations being its children. This maternal image is central to Laozi's teachings, emphasizing a return to one's profound original roots, back to the Tao. This return is seen as a natural law essential to understanding the universe. Mystical unity involves this return to the Tao, where all things ultimately return to their origins for eternal existence, achieving their true nature, which Laozi refers to as eternal life. Thus, the critical point in practicing spiritual cultivation, according to Laozi, involves achieving mystical unity with the Tao through 3 stages. 1. Calming the mind, striving for peace and non-action. This initial stage calls for practitioners to simplify their lives, reducing desires and detaching from worldly concerns. The aim is to shed selfish traits, a necessary step for those seeking to follow the Tao. Laozi teaches that by following the Tao, one continually lessens attachments until reaching a state of non-action. 2. Understanding the Tao, grasping the fundamental principles of the Tao. This transformative stage occurs after fully relinquishing all worldly attachments, including one's ego. It involves clearing the mundane mind to recognize the sacred universal nature of the Tao within oneself and everywhere. This understanding, referred to as awakening, leads to a harmonious and timeless state. 3. Mystical unity. Complete detachment from the worldly, uniting with the all. In this final stage, practitioners merge entirely with the Tao and the universe, transcending any sense of separation or distinction. Achieving mystical unity means seeing everything as one, dissolving divisions and blending into the universal whole. Achieving this state of mystical unity brings about a profound peace and contentment that surpasses ordinary pleasures, offering a gentle and sublime tranquility only known to those who have experienced it firsthand. It's a feeling beyond the reach of those unacquainted with this deep spiritual connection.
Hey everyone, your comments truly matter, offering insights and motivation to others and uplifting our creative team at Lighthouse of Wisdom channel. Sharing your thoughts and experiences enriches our community. So, let's get the conversation started below and help illuminate our path with your wisdom.